We'll have a little panel discussion here, and there will be you will be able to pose questions from the audience here live and online, and I'll try to handle the online questions as well. So please hold the speakers from the morning. Please find a chair here on stage. So I will come back, Professor Anne-Simone, Maria Street, Anne-Marie Anderrson, Pauliina Damdimopoulou, and Professor Niels Jørgensen, and again, Terje, who is still on stage. Perfect. Yeah, and let's see if I can control all of these interactive things here. But I will start posing some questions for you, and then I will leave it open microphone for you as well. If we look at the joint congress and the 3 days of excellent science presented there on EDCs and other areas within endocrinology, it's a very long word, yes. Do you think policymakers are aware of these new scientific developments and they integrate them into their policies? And if not, what can we as a community do to change this? Anyone wants to answer that?
Too bad.
Yeah.
I might say, I think they are broadly aware, but there is this discrepancy between what they are aware of and what they need versus what scientists want to do and what their needs are. So scientists are nerdy people and they just want to make exciting new models and new knowledge, which is nice. But if it can't be implemented in regulatory guideline systems, then it's useless from a regulatory perspective, right? So you can make this most fantastic assay that you want, but if it doesn't have an application, regulators don't really care anyway. So that, so we need this a better and pressure for a dialogue between policymakers and scientific and also the medical profession, sort of. They need to tell us what they need, and we have to then give them what they need, if that makes sense. They do know, but they don't know it all, and neither do we.
And I know there's a politician sitting there, so you can just listen. Yeah, great. Is anyone wants to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say that we have this knowledge in the community of endocrinologists, and we do feel that we have a very big responsibility to make this knowledge also available for politicians. And I think this event hosted by these two great European endocrine societies are an example of that. I mean, we do have to do what we can to make this knowledge known.
Yeah, great. Another question, health and research budgets are under pressure across the European Union. Why do you think that policymakers should continue to invest in EDC research and other types of health and environmental research? Maybe it's obvious answer, but please elaborate. Any of you?
It's an obvious answer. Prevention is cheaper than treatment.
Yeah.
It's the same. We need to prevent, and the benefits of preventing is much bigger than having to cure.
And Niels,
I would just say the reproductive problems we see, they are so serious and they really are expensive for our society, just treating and treating and treating. And we need to prevent that. And it's not just fertility potential that are reduced, it's also this health burden that seems to be increasing. You know, so it would be a good investment to prevent really. So that's why we should have a focus.
Yeah,
I would say that proper prevention comes from proper knowledge. So I think we have highlighted very well the research needs we have. We need to have a better interaction among the different parts, because I think policymakers are aware, but also we need to have a better communication with industry as well, because everybody has a perfect knowledge of one part and we are not interacting yet properly.
So you know enough to act, but there are still blind spots where you need to find the connection between things.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not only, I mean, clinicians, and it's not only basic researchers, but it's also toxicologists and what they're doing and suggesting new assays to industry. Industry is producing continuously new chemicals. So sometimes they're also trying to replace harmful chemicals, but we don't know if these new chemicals are harmful as well. So we need to speed up everything.
I would also like to add that there was the key point of we keep adding chemicals to the market. So what we see today is just a snapshot in a long developmental time course where we increase the production of chemicals, we increase the production of human-made materials like plastics. They keep accumulating in the environment, in our bodies, in our germ cells and fetuses. So this problem is not going to go away if we stop funding it. It will become only bigger, and then it will be even more expensive to take care of. So I think it would be extremely smart to really start investing into this research now. There seems to be endless funding, for example, for AI to solve problems, but I don't think AI will get the EDCs out of the society, the system. So let's show the same enthusiasm for this research field, please.
Yeah.
I think AI will help us a lot to understand what's the effect of mixtures, and we have all these very complex biological systems, but it's not going to do all the...
It's a tool
It's a tool.
Yeah. So you more or less, Pauliina, more or less answered my questions, because, and also both in your presentations, but also right now, that we spoke a lot about fertilities and the role of EDCs. And when I look at your presentations and so on, again, it was not very optimistic presentation you had. Where is this going to end? How concerned should we be? Because it sounds like that each generation will be more and more infertile and more, toxic. Yeah. It's what do we look into?
Right. So we know that the use of medically assisted reproductive technologies is increasing, and it's of course more available, but it also means that there's more patients who need help getting a child. And this applies to all age groups. It's not only the aging women, as we often think. The main population part in the IVF clinics is women from 35, more or less. Then, of course, it's interesting to see sometimes the politicians decide that we can fix the fertility rates by making IVF even more available, starting to suggest that, unlimited cycles, well, this is very expensive to the taxpayers, and older women. There's European countries where you can get IVF when you're 50 plus, and this is when the woman is in menopause, so it's not with her own eggs, this is for sure. So I think, again, trying to fix the fertility rates problem with the more medical treatments it also has a dead end at some point.
Yeah.
Obviously, people are informed and they can make decisions of if they want to have a family or not. But the ones who would like to, it's good if they can have this opportunity in as clean environment as possible. That really they can decide about their family, and it's not the pollution around them that makes the decision for them.
Yeah.
And maybe I think we should also note, as we've heard, that it goes beyond fertility. So fertility is also a marker of overall health, I think.
Yeah.
And if I may say, I don't know where it will end, but I think we always end by saying we need more research, and that is true. But I think, as you said, we already know enough to do something, and we need to act and not wait for the final proof, because then we will never be able to act if we wait for the final proof, because we will never get that when we talk about humans, at least. So we need to act, and also, well, that's maybe a political statement, but is there an unnecessary use of all these chemicals? Maybe they should be used, maybe some of the harmful chemicals should be used, but should they be used to that extent that we do it right now? Because if we think of the mixture effect is that exists, then it's a matter of reducing the overall exposure level.
Okay.
Since we are getting slightly political, I'll do it. I think, so I don't know where we're going to end either, but probably not somewhere nice in the near future. But I think I'm not looking for a chemical-free society.
No.
That's not realistic, and we don't want it. We just want to control the worst of the chemicals, of course. But as if I'm going to speak to policymakers, I think we need even more pressure on making the industry do the right thing. I don't think they are pressed enough to do the right thing. And putting the burden on individuals. This is, if you go back thousands of years, society has a habit of making the burden shift to the woman and then take all the credit for the males. And this is a little bit the same in toxicology, where in my field, where reproductive toxicology and the fetus is the most vulnerable. And if you then put it on the individual to look after chemical, well, who's the one who has to look after is the pregnant woman again, right? So again, the toxic mother. So we need to sort of, as society, also stand up and say, well, chemistry industries do better.
So instead of what we just done in Denmark, having help for the second child as well now, maybe we should start in another place. But what do you think about this? Is this the only way to put a bandage on the wound, like helping for the second child? And what is your, because the Danish...
I think we have to remember that fertility treatment may help infertile couple, but it's not for couples. I mean, the success is not 100%. There are a lot of couples that go through fertility treatment and never succeed. So this is also the reality.
And we should remember it's very, very expensive, and it's physically very hard, because it's always, despite of it's the men that have the poor semen quality, that's the women that are treated, and sometimes they're treated with this in vitro fertilization, where they go through hormonal stimulation, taking eggs out and so on. So it's really physically very hard treatment for the women, and it's expensive from an economical point of view. And as Maria says, it's not all that.
No.
That actually go home with a child at the end.
No, exactly. So I think we should start to open questions from the floor. There's already and Karen Liltorp who's sitting there. Maybe there's one politician who has been, I think we should have a microphone, because maybe the audience here can hear you, but not the online audience. So we need microphones every time you pose a question. In the front here, yes. And please state your name and where you're from before you pose a question.
Yes, I'm Karen Liltorp. I'm from the Danish Parliament, so I'm one of the politicians. But before I entered in the Parliament, I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm just interested in I know all about safety testing when it comes to pharmaceuticals. Should we put same kind of restrictions on these new chemicals, or would it be a too hard job for the industry if we claim that the same safety issues should be made when you put a new chemical on the market?
You're the regulator. Who dare to answer?
I'm not an expert in regulation, but according to REACH, I think for new chemicals, they are, you should do some testing and before you get a new chemical approved. But I mean, the problem is probably all the chemicals that were made during the last 20, 30, 40 years that were never really tested against whether they were endocrine disrupting. And I think there is a big lag on getting those tested, but I'm sure we have people in the audience that know more about how chemicals are regulated that can answer that.
I was looking at Terje, but I mean, the little I know about pharmaceutical safety testing is that there's also clinical trials, and I guess that could be skipped for the industrial chemicals, but maybe we can find a middle ground between the current approach for the REACH-based chemical testing and then what is done for the preclinical pharmaceutical testing.
No, I just agree with what you said. I think that the burden of proof to prove that something is safe for a new pharmaceutical would probably be an overextension for what you could do for the chemical industry. But I still think you can increase the burden of proof for the industry in what is regarded as safe for what they put on the market. So it is a middle ground. We all like the Goldilocks story, right? So aim for the middle.
A couple of questions more from the physical audience, and then I will also take some from the online audience. Yes, please.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Christina. I'm from the Danish Plastic Federation, actually. Well, thank you for very, very interesting presentations. I do support the suggestion that you work together with the industry a lot more, specifically on the polymer expert side, because I could see that some of the examples of products that have, for example, the plasticizers within it, some of the examples were plastic packaging, for example, and you use the plasticizers within PVC. And you don't use the PVC in Europe as much within, for example, plastic packaging. So there is a lot of knowledge within the industry where you could, I don't say we don't have plasticizers, I just say that they are in other products. So if you should have suggestions that are directly pointing to the sources, then it would be interesting to work together with the people knowing something about plastics, so that you could cooperate and point at the real, the sources, the products that we need to have a legislation regarding.
Yeah.
I hope it makes sense.
Anyone would like to answer it?
It wasn't a question, well, it was a comment.
Or a statement, yeah, but maybe comment on it or whatever. It's, yeah, thank you. There was, you had a question, right? Yes, can we have a microphone to the lady? And there's also one there. But yes, should we start with you then? Then the question will come to you later. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Henrik Anderrson from the Ministry of Environment in Denmark. And thank you very much for excellent presentations this morning, but also very scaring presentations. What I also learned here is much of the knowledge you presented today is focusing on, let's say, a few groups of chemicals, as some of you said also. And when we talk about prevention, many of these chemicals are already regulated to some point. So what about all the rest? And I noted that Terje said that we have a way forward, but something like we don't have a legal way forward. So could you clarify what you meant by that? Thank you.
I can, and I think you misunderstood, because that was in terms of the NAMs. There is a legal loophole or opening in legal text in Europe to replace animal testing. Because in endocrine disruptors, you have to basically prove 3 points. And that is, it has to cause an adverse effect in an intact organism through a hormone-mediated disruption, right? But to prove an adverse effect in an intact organism, you need to use an animal. But there are loopholes where you can now use alternative test methods that are equally predictive of an in vivo endpoint. They just haven't defined what is equally predictive. So no one really knows how you can do that. But there is, so that I think you misunderstood in terms of where I meant in the legal openings. Yeah.
And the last question from the floor right now, and then we'll also give the chat a chance. Yes?
Thank you.
Does it work?
Does it work?
Yes.
Now it does.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Cecil Dykker from Swedish NGO Chemsec, policy advisor for them. And I would also thank you for a very interesting presentation. I thought it was very clear and very good overview, very easy to understand and follow. But I would like to ask a little bit about new information and the most worrying information. As you could say, maybe it's well known that bisphenols are endocrine disruptors, and the story about the sperm count is also well known for many years. But what would you say is the most worrying information in terms of which chemicals are the most worrying and which effects are the most worrying? Could be maybe the new effects on bone that I have not heard about. I don't know if you're able to sort of prioritize within what you said. I think it's mainly a question for the first tandem maybe, but also to others.
I think it's very difficult to prioritize because it would be dangerous. So, I mean, we certainly know that some, because these are really harmful, so we should get rid of them. And now, I mean, there's been a big alarm on BPA, which has been replaced with other bisphenols, but now we are learning that most of these bisphenols are just as harmful. and there's a big alarm on PFAS, but we also have phthalates. The point is that in everyday life, these chemicals are pervasive, and we are continuously exposed to mixtures. And we need to understand and tear out what's the effect of these mixtures, basically. So I think that we must be aware that all chemicals can be harmful, and we must try to lower the exposure altogether, as some of these luckily are non-persistent chemicals. But I think it's a bit dangerous to say that we should focus only on one chemical and we should be worried only of bone rather than central nervous system or fertility, because, I mean, from a physiological point of view, all these things are clearly interrelated. I mean, we are just one body and it's one health.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky question. Basically, should we focus on very severe disease in a very small part of the population, or should we worry about the shift of the whole population being less healthy? And I don't think there is a right answer to that, basically. I think we have proofs of concept, and now we need to think about, again, how to screen and prevent the harmful chemicals. And maybe just as an anecdote, I think I would like to cite Barbara Dominicks, who was saying we really need to deal about endocrine disruptors because the next generation might not be smart enough to do it.
Yeah, Niels.
Well, I don't have the answer, but maybe you actually gave the answer yourself, because if we go back 20, 30 years ago, we talked about reproductive problems. And then the problem is basically that we see that more and more organ systems are affected. I think this is really the most scaring. It's not just our organ system. So that is the most scaring, that we should just look in all organ systems and we will most likely find an adverse effect. That is scaring, I think. And as you said that, well, if you think it's endocrine disrupting or exposures, why should we think it's only the testicles or the ovaries? Why not the brain? So if we attack the chemicals, we more or less cure all the organ systems, perhaps.
Yeah, Terje.
Well, everything has been covered, and I think this is about the mixture and the cocktail we're living in is mainly the main issue. So we have to have this helicopter view of it all, not looking at single chemicals or single effects. And all these endocrinologists in this conference, do they know that we have a tendency to isolate things? Well, I work on reproduction and androgen and estrogens, and you work on thyroid and brain. I mean, all these hormone axes are interacting. This is also the chemical space. And no one today has a problem saying, well, cigarette smoking is a cocktail of chemicals, and some people get smokers' legs when they're 40, and someone live to the 90, and someone get cancer, someone don't, some are more vulnerable. But we can also blame it on the cigarettes, many of these things, but even though we can't explain mechanistically why. And it's the same with this cocktail of chemicals in some respect, I think. We see this effect and some people get sick and some people don't. So some people are more vulnerable because it's interaction with genes and environment and the whole picture. And that is, in a reductionist point of view, in chemical testing, when we're testing one chemical and one effect, that is very, very difficult to do and get the real picture of it. So this is the great challenge we have. But of course, give us money and we'll try and do it.
Yeah, I will also say regarding which chemicals, and we are very much aware that there come more and more papers, more and more studies on the same chemicals. And as we also heard, some of these are regulated, but we still find them in human samples. And I think we also need to be smarter on how we actually figure out what are the real cocktail, because we are looking at these usual suspects, but are we missing some important chemicals that we didn't realize were also there? There are ways of measuring chemicals more general, and this methodology is being developed at the moment. One of the reasons that we do measure the same chemicals very often is phthalates, bisphenol A's, parabens, we have heard it, is because it takes time to develop the methods to measure them well. And when you first have those measured, you use those. But yeah, we need to be smarter at measuring more chemicals to understand what is the real mixture.
Can I continue?
Yes.
I do agree, and it's exactly the analytical chemistry is a science in itself, and we just cannot go and say, now I want to measure all those unknown chemicals. We basically need to know what we measure to have reliable results. And this is, for example, a challenge now in another emerging field, the microplastics. Everybody wants to measure and know what they're doing, but there's no methods available that are reliably measuring them. So it takes time to have good methods. Next problem is that we don't really know what chemicals are out there. If the manufacturers label their plastics and products saying, we use these additives, we know plastics have 16,000 different additives likely, but in what type of products, where, how much, we don't know. So then it's up to some scientists to try to do non-target screening and discover what new chemicals we have in humans and samples, and this is quite unreasonable to think that would work in the long run. So obviously chemicals have to be tested properly before they're put on the market, and we need to label the products to tell the consumers what is in there. And then we come to the what is the most sensitive endpoint. Then we have different fields. I think, of course, it's the female fertility. Like, that's my field of research. Measuring ovarian weights is like we would measure human brain to try to decide if there was an impact on IQ. Obviously, organ weight is really, really bad measure of an organ function. Many of my colleagues in academia doing ovary research have stopped taking the weights a long time ago because they never change. And you see still significant effects on how the eggs are doing, how they mature, the quality, and that's really what matters. So we are not there for the female fertility, not sure about the other fields. We're not there to even know what to measure to have a good protective assay predicting the human effects. So research will go on, and as we learn more about the chemical toxicity, thresholds will go down. And about using the same chemicals, the last time I checked, there's 16,000 papers on bisphenol A on PubMed. Yet we have completely different interpretations in the US and EU if this chemical is harmful. So sometimes it also becomes a story of the next level of people deciding what the data means and also deciding what is an adverse effect. Do we care about the intelligence of the population? Do we care about the obesity? And then you do the calculation. Maybe it's not as important in all parts of the world, but I think in Europe, we fortunately have been a bit precautionary, and I think this is the storyline we need to follow. I don't know any example where we have been too cautious about the chemical. The more we know, the lower the thresholds become.
Thank you. I think we'll have some questions from the chat here. And maybe it's you who will answer again, because can you give an overview from what we are missing now with the rat studies, considering the female fertility? And please make it short, not everything. Maybe.
I think there's a lot of connecting dots from the known human reproductive health issues to, for example, the rat model. What should we be measuring to understand if the effect leads to polycystic ovaries or endometriosis or implantation failures? So just this cross-checking. Are these even endpoints we can ever measure in a rodent, or should we have other types of methods? Implantation, embryo development are different between rodents and humans, and there, for example, I see great hope for new stem cell-based embryo models that we can make in vitro to mimic implantation. So for some parts of the story, I think there's cool new things coming up. For other parts, we still are waiting for the cool new stuff.
Okay, thank you. Next question is Juliana Angelova, who is writing, as clinicians, how do you address these topics with vulnerable groups like pregnant women to inform them on the importance of reducing exposures and potential health impacts? Talk about Terje's how to propose guilt. And what type of prevention resources are available educating the general public in a clinical context?
I'm not going to answer it, but I do want to say this. We always have policymakers, we always have scientists, and what we often miss in these discussions are social scientists, I think, philosophers, ethicists, and so forth. And this, again, I get back to this. What could individual people do? We can help them, and we can say, well, don't eat all those paracetamols, and wash your clothes before if you buy new ones, and so that's simple things you can say, right? But as soon as you do it, you also give them sort of a warning sign that it's your responsibility. to look after your unborn child for all these chemicals, thousands and thousands of them in the environment. And this poor pregnant woman is going to deal with that because society decides that we don't want to regulate these chemicals. I think that is the wrong starting point. So, and there I think we could benefit from some social scientists to help us out.
But are we doing something in the at the moment? Yeah.
So I think we're going to hear a little bit later about informing citizens on what they can do, because the current situation is bad. So we need to do something about it. But there is a need for regulation, as we said. Also, we cannot put the burden on the consumers, because it's impossible. I mean, we had a study in Belgium looking at pesticides on toys in daycare. And basically it varies with the season, because it varies with what the farmers will spray according to the season. So you take, a lot of measures, and then you drop your kid at daycare, you will be exposed to whatever there is there. So it just shows the limitation of what we can do. Even though I think also informing the citizen is good, because it might decrease the consumption of some of those toxicants.
Yes.
I fully agree, and also when we sit with the men, so it's obvious to say, what can I do myself? But I think we should also, as clinicians, be very much aware to not blame the individual person and take away the blame they feel themselves, because we have to say, no matter what you do, even though you try to live as healthy and try to avoid as many chemicals as possible, we are still all exposed. So we should make sure and tell them it's not your own responsibility. You basically cannot do very much yourself, and take away the guilt they feel.
So maybe we'll, again, like you mentioned, come back to that in the second half. But yes, you have a comment as well?
Yes, I don't think that it's always a matter of feeling guilty. I mean, I think that in many countries, and also we have a LIFE project ongoing in Italy. So actually we are going for a prevention campaign, and we are giving advice to pregnant women. And this is going through at least the first year of life. And we shall see soon the results if we do have actually a reduction in exposure. But I think that this has to do with public awareness. And I think that we do need public awareness also to put pressure on the systems if we want to come to some kind of regulation, which obviously would be much more effective.
Yeah, Terje.
I just want to add one provocative comment at the end. Just for fun. So if you have this information to the public, I'm just wondering to what extent, how big percentage of the population would actually act on it. There are some that will do a lot, right? But I think a lot of it lies with policy, because well, you don't want this product because of the chemicals, and then you look at the price, you're going to buy something and it costs 10,000 kroner, and then you find something on Temu, it costs 50 kroner, and then of course people buy the cheap stuff. And this is how you have to regulate it. You can't ask people, because the majority of people, they go for price, they go for convenience, they go for, I think, not people like us who's more passionate about it, I think. That was just to provoke you for fun.
Can I be more provocative?
Yeah. Now we open the floor here.
No, I mean, I have many feelings about the lifestyle advice to pregnant women. Of course, we all do. And recently I read for the first time this dystopian future novel that is extremely famous. It was published 40 years ago, and it's called The Handmaid's Tale. And of course, it has many shocking things, but I think I got really stuck on the point that since women are infertile, the society starts controlling their lifestyle to an extent that they're basically kept prisoners. There's no coffee, tea, nothing than a controlled diet, controlled environment to guarantee that there's still some fertility left. And of course, that's one way to go to the future. We'll keep producing stuff to the market, and then we just take the fertile women and put them in a box. But we don't want to end there. So that's why we really have to lift our focus from the pregnant women and think that this is a societal issue that we are all responsible for. We also all came from a pregnant woman, so we really should think of this as a joint effort to have a clean environment and not only increase the burden on the already stressed pregnant women.
Yes, I think we have to end here, unfortunately, from this session, and then we'll have